All right, welcome into another episode of Carps Corner. Going to break down the results from the Arkansas State game, what that ultimately means, things we liked, things we didn't like, what we need to improve upon, what the Buckeyes need to do to improve to get ready for Toledo, and then ultimately Wisconsin, which just was announced. Toledo night game, 7 o'clock. Wisconsin night game, going to be a 7:30 kick. So pretty excited for the next two night games, and we'll get into Toledo later this week. Toledo didn't need to be a night game. I like Wisconsin as a night game. Classic rivalry, especially over the last 25 years. Hopefully they're 3-1. We'll get into their loss a little bit. But the fact that that's going to be a night game, I think that'll be fun for everybody. It's still warm weather, still should be good outside. And hopefully everyone will enjoy that. Um, where the Bucks need to improve, what ultimately happened. There's a lot there that we're going to get into with everything that went on. So it was big, huge weekend in college football as well. So when you're complaining that Ohio State beats Arkansas State, 45-12, and it didn't feel as good as it would have looked, um, just remember this. There were a lot of teams that got bit by smaller schools, especially schools in the Sun Belt, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Things that I really liked from the game. Number one, this is really good for the defense. Last two games, Buckeye defense has given up one touchdown. 10 points against Notre Dame, field goal, touchdown. Really one solid drive. And then against Arkansas State, 4 field goals. I would rather give up 4 field goals to Arkansas State than one touchdown. Because what that tells me is when it matters, and that's in the red zone, you're able to get off the field. No team ever at the end of the game looks up and says, hey, we had more total yards. We won this game. No, it is defined by points. And so this team, defense, gave up some yards, and we'll get into the penalties and everything else that happened in the middle. But when it came down to it, you start crossing, the 40, 35, 30-yard line. That's when you start to ratchet up. And that's what this defense did. And so giving up, a handful of drives there, penalty assisted, but giving up a handful of drives and ultimately holding Arkansas State to field goals is a win because red zone defense is critical. When you get down there, there's a big difference between 3 and 7 psychologically for teams, but also for defenses as far as being able to win games. And so that's what it matters. End of half, end of game, third down, getting off the field, and red zone defense. Those 3 metrics are the most important for measuring your defense. Because if you're good in those 3 areas, you're generally going to be pretty good. And as a quarterback, those are the 3 areas you have to be the best. So that's very important. Defense, I think, did a great job. Now, some of those drives kept alive by some penalties. With the punt block situation, we're not being able to dive over one of the defenders in the back. I don't like this rule in college football. If someone wants to dive over top of it, they should be able to. We're protecting guys from themselves. It would be a lot better if they changed the rules of the punt to the NFL rules, where there's a reason in the NFL you don't see spread punt because it's not advantageous to do so because you can't cover until the ball is kicked. It's an ineligible player downfield. Whereas in college, on a punt, guys can just slam and go. And so it's a huge advantage in coverage to do the spread punt, but now you get all this nonsense and all these made up rules and stuff where you can't leap over players in front of the punter. It's ridiculous. Just change the rules. Regardless, it's been changed for a number of years. Taraja Mitchell goes over the top. He's a very veteran player. Should know better. Does it. And it negates a touchdown return, which there was, I believe, a block in the back or holding as well. But then what it also does is it keeps that drive alive. I believe a 15-yard penalty. And so that's bad. A lot of offsides by the defense. Can't have that. I know you want to be aggressive, and this is a team that 10, 12 TFLs, and I love getting in the backfield, and I love getting after it, and that's awesome. But got to get disciplined with that. Got to work on that. Those are big deals. Got some PI stuff you got to get taken care of. And then you've got, the halftime situation, which we'll get into, and I'll break down the 3 different penalty situations. But what it comes down to ultimately is this team had 9 penalties for 85 yards. Most of them were the defense this game. Last week against Notre Dame, most of them were offensive penalties. And so this is something Ryan Day, and especially when you start talking about pre-snap penalties, things that are just focus-based, not necessarily hearing what Ryan Day has said to the team, but I am guaranteeing you this, there will be an added emphasis in this of what's going on. So we'll just, you know what, forget it. We're going to get into this right now. There are three types of penalties that most coaches look at and that I kind of view it. There's your pre-snap penalty, your technique, your discipline, jumping off sides, false starts, aligning in the neutral zone, procedure penalties, not having enough guys on the line of scrimmage. Those are focus penalties. Those are ones that, you know what, when guys, they happen too much in practice, take laps, start working on it, and you become punitive. And if you're going to be a repeat offender, I don't care how good you are, we're not going to tolerate it. We're going to get those out of here. Then you have penalties of technique, holding on offense, holding on defense. Maybe if you're a guy that's a habitual face masker, pass interference. Those are ones that either A, you're not physically gifted enough to be able to do it. Generally not the case, especially at Ohio State. Or B, your technique is bad and you begin to cheat. Your feet get slow. You're reaching, you're grabbing, you're doing things like that. You're not patient. You're not doing what you're coached. So those have to get out. And you work on those through practice by repping the technique properly. And if guys start cheating, and you see it in times in practice, offensive linemen hold, defensive backs get handsy. Hey, and you say something, and eventually it doesn't catch up with you until it catches up with you. I never really liked that saying a lot, but it always seems to apply because you get away with something until one time, all of a sudden the dam breaks, and then it starts costing you games, and it's a negative situation. And so that's the second. So you work on those. And if you're going to do it, get out. We're not going to play guys that hold. We're not going to play guys that have PI, guys that are habitual face masters. Bend your knees, strike the way you're supposed to strike, hands inside, and execute your techniques. And then the last one is the one that's the most frustrating, and this is the one coaches are hugely punitive towards, is the knucklehead, the bonehead plays, the unsportsmanlike conducts. And I'm not talking about the random targeting or the unsportsmanlike conduct when you're celebrating with your teammates and the officials go nuts. I'm talking trash over the field, standing over guys, the taunting, the swearing, the profanity, the things that are highly avoidable that should not be happening on the football field. Those are the ones that I'm ultimately talking about right there. And those are the ones where you sit guys down, that the guys can get benched for a series. They're coming out of the game. You do it enough times, heck, you get kicked out. I don't even factor in the targeting and stuff unless you're someone that just does it all the time. Or you're like the dude at LSU who just literally speared the FSU quarterback right in the face without even trying to wrap his arms or anything. But that's a rarity. Those things are rarities. But the three types of penalties, pre-snap, those are the focus ones, the discipline ones, the technique penalties, your holdings, your PIs, clipping, anything like that. That is, you just can't get it done because you're not using your technique, or the fact that you're too lazy to execute the way that you should, or you can't physically do it, which is never the case. And then your last one, your knucklehead or bonehead penalties. And I guarantee you this, you let things slide a little bit in practice because your guys are good and it doesn't happen in games. But as soon as it starts happening in games, the coaches ratchet up the intensity. They start associating penalties with it in practice. And I say penalties meaning, hey, we're going to start doing laps. We're going to start doing up downs, things that we don't want to waste time. Coaches don't like punishing their players in practice because it's not getting you better. Punishing your players isn't working on reps. It's not working on techniques. You're doing hit-its or up downs or running or any other type of penalty or punishment. That doesn't help you. It helps you remember things, hopefully, but it's not making you a better player. And so a lot of it has to do with the technique aspect of it. They want to make sure guys are getting better. They don't want to have to sit here and hammer on guys for doing things that they shouldn't be. And so Ryan, I guarantee you this week, has made an emphasis with this. This is done. It's over with now. We're going to start punishing guys. We're going to start doing things and making sure that if you can't do what you're supposed to do and if you can't do what you're coached, there's going to be repercussions for it. And it's a famous Urban Meyer saying when it starts coming down to this, the behavior you see is either taught or allowed. If you're permitted, you're promoted. So he's going to lean on the position coaches, you lean to your coordinators. Either you're telling them to do this or you're allowing it to happen. And against Notre Dame, didn't cost you a game. Against Arkansas State, didn't cost you a game. But these are things you have to ultimately get fixed. So it comes down to the position coaches. We're going to talk about it. We're going to work on it. Larry Johnson's going to work on his guys to make sure, hey, we're not jumping off sides anymore. We're locking in. I love the aggression. Let's get after it. Let's go. We can have success, but let's make sure that we're watching the ball. Same thing on the other side, with Justin Fry, and I guarantee you they seem to get that under control a little bit. But 9 penalties, 85 yards, too much. Let's look offensively. CJ, pretty solid day, 16 to 24, over 350 yards, 4 TDs, no picks. You'll love the clean sheet on the interceptions, incredibly accurate. He's doing all that. Kyle McCord even got in the game. Didn't get a chance to really explore probably him and get a chance to see him the way that everybody would have liked. But I thought he did, an admirable job in there. But CJ looking better and being to look more appropriate. Remind you, this is still without Julian Fleming, and this is still without Jackson Smith and Jigba. And so with that, rely on Marvin Harrison. Game 1, it was Emeka Egbuka. Emeka, I believe, had 9 catches in the first game, 4 catches this game, $115, 1 touchdown, 51-yard long. Was able to get going, looking really good. On the other side, like I said, you've got my man starving Marvin Harrison. 7 catches, 184 yards, 3 TDs, 45-yard long. Should have had another TD in there. I'm not sure exactly the ruling. I feel like we've been hosed on that many times about what's possession in the end zone, what's not. But great day out of those 2 guys. So hopefully once you get back the other 2, you can keep all 4 of those guys healthy throughout the season. Maybe you start working Jalen Ballard in there, and then you've got a nice complement of dudes, but you're feeling a lot better about that wide receiver situation now and everything that it's being able to bring to the table. You're worried, obviously, like I said, there's Chris Olave, there's Garrett Wilson. Everyone seems to be stepping up, and you still don't have 2 of your top 4 guys out there, which will pay huge dividends. But this is great to have these guys grow right now and to see them kind of alternate. Emeka had a great first game. Marvin stepped up, had a big second game. Got to finish some of those catches and make sure that we're holding on to them, so you don't give the refs an opportunity to take points off the board and take a touchdown away from you. And the guy that I'm probably as impressed with as anybody, he had, I think, 3 or 4 catches in the first game. Cade Stover, 2 catches, 40 yards, had a 35-yard long. They were trying to get him another catch where they were trying to drain guys out and run him across, and I believe it was one of Emeka's catches. And they guard Cade Stover instead of taking Emeka on the deep route. And you usually play it deep to shallow. And so they're trying to work Cade Stover in. He's doing a good job, viable passing threat. Hopefully continue to get Mitch Rossi involved, and they can kind of round out this team. I thought played pretty well. Offensive line, you want to see them get going a little more. And I always look at the offensive line. How'd you rush the ball? Mayan Williams, 8 for 46, nice 25-yard long, little explosive gain. Trey, 10 for 87 with a 41-yarder, which really helped him, and 2 TDs. And so those guys got it going, but I want to see an offensive line that's dominant. And I don't feel like we started to see that at the end of the Notre Dame game, and you saw it a little bit here. But against Arkansas State, my expectations are massive for these guys because they're really good, and you're far more talented. So you've got to be able to bring it at that point. You can't just be leaning on dudes. You got to be opening up holes to look like Moses parting the Red Sea. That's what we're looking for, especially when you play a team where you have significantly better talent. Now, Toledo's rolling town. They've got pretty talented defense statistically, but they haven't really played anybody either. So good on paper, should still be a big day based upon the talent gap you're seeing. But they do have Dallas game. They've got some guys over there that can play ball. That one of them played at Ohio State. So they've got some dudes over there that can get it done. Want to look at the defensive side, and this warms my heart. Once again, the linebackers looking really good. Steel Chambers, one of the players of the game. 6 tackles, TFL, a sack, flying around. You see the speed. Cody Simon, 6 tackles, 2 TFLs. Tommy Eichenberg, 5 tackles. Like, those are your 3 top dudes. Tommy played unbelievable in week 1. He was flying around here in week 2. Steele had a little bit more production. Cody looks really good. And, people probably don't look at Cody the same way they've been looking at Tommy and Steele. He's playing really well. When you have 3 really good players, you can play over 2 positions like that are smart, that are fast, that look really good on film. It's a huge benefit because you can get those guys some breathers. You can get them a little bit of rest, spell them a little bit so they're not as fatigued, because as the season goes on, someone gets nicked up, take some reps off of them, and it feels a little bit better. So those 3 guys playing terrific are phenomenal. You got Mike Hall, 3 tackles, 3 TFLs, a sack. I mean, this guy's a monster. Him and Tyleik Williams inside, who had 1.5 TFLs. Like, these dudes have been living in the backfield. Sawyer got a half tackle for loss. JT, Tui Maloau, half tackle for a loss, or a tackle for loss. You're feeling good about what those guys are doing. They had 12 TFLs as a team. What that tells me is you are getting penetration into the backfield, which is huge. Now, he said there's also been some of the offsides. You need to get that remedied. That's something that we can take care of. But the fact that they're changing the line of scrimmage, and you should be able to do this against opponents that you're more talented than. And if you can't do it here, you're going to have a heck of a time doing it against the Wisconsins, Michigan States, Michigans, heaven forbid, the Bamas and Georgias. So you need to see it now, and you're showing it now, which is great. The defensive line's coming along and in a big way. And I know that some folks want to see even more of some of the young guys with what they've been able to ultimately bring to the table. Looking at the secondary, this is nice. Josh Proctor had 3 tackles. Lathan Ransom had 4, and I believe a TFL as well. So Josh Proctor got benched in the first game. Ryan Day talked about it. Missed a tackle, maybe not doing what you're supposed to. Your eye control isn't great. He sits down with Perry Eliano. They put Lathan Ransom in. Lathan plays awesome. He's a great tackler. Smart, knows what to do, always in the right position. Good football player. Josh Proctor, big-time 5-star recruit. Probably came in here thinking, not getting his head, 3 and done. Tall, rangy, super athletic. When he got here, he'd probably tell you he was a bit immature. Probably the best thing that happened to him last year is he ultimately got injured and had to come back for another season. I like guys that can handle adversity. Josh Proctor was pissed. He was ticked off about not being able to play against Notre Dame. Talked to Perry Eliano. Ryan Day said it. He'll get another shot. He's going to get a shot. He'll be able to get out there. And that's a great sign of maturity. Josh is going to still be a tremendous football player. He's got a great career at the next level. But how you handle things like that are massively important. You got a guy behind you that's really good. And so if you think you're just going to be able to go out there and do what you want, and not that Josh thinks that, but ultimately he was able to put that behind him, come out here, gets another chance, makes the most of it. Didn't do anything crazy spectacular. Just do what you're supposed to do. And with ability like his, the spectacular will come. It just takes a little bit of time. But if you do your job the best you can, when you're athletic like that, those plays will find you. And I'm excited to see that he handled it like a pro. That's what these guys are. You handle it like a pro, like a man. Sit down with your coach. This is what you did. We told you couldn't do it. I'm going to give you another shot, but we got to be better. And it's not that every mistake you're going to leave. We're going to pull you out. Mistakes aren't it, but you got to be able to coachable and do what you're told. Had that. Another positive note coming out of maybe something that doesn't look quite as good. Denzel Burke didn't have his best game. I wouldn't say he struggled this year, but he hasn't probably played quite as well as what people remembered from last season. A couple of reasons for that. Number one, I think the whole defense is better. So last year, no one threw at him. Maybe go to the other side. Maybe you can just run the football because the run defense wasn't as good. Now, run defense is better. They're throwing it a little bit more. Cam Brown's playing really well on the other side. He had 5 tackles. He's been locking dudes down. So Denzel, a little bit of a slump, maybe. In a corner, it's weird. It's like being a pitcher. You have some good, you have some bad. You get a little funk for a game or two, you can pull out of that. But you get J.K. Johnson in there, because you have Hancock is out right now. So Jordan Hancock's out. You get J.K. Johnson in there. J.K. played great. did a really good job. He had a really solid end to training camp. That gave him the ability to get in there and the coaches to have confidence in him. So now you feel like you have three good guys that are healthy right now. And hopefully when you get Hancock back, my man Herbie, he'll be in there and he'll be ready to go. And here's the best part. You look around college football. We'll finish up with this. You got Bama and Texas playing the 20-19 game. Texas is a lot better. Bama looks like they got some issues. They're not invincible. You could be Notre Dame losing to Marshall, 26-21, getting your starting quarterback knocked out. I mean, my Marshall team looked better. They looked better up there if you watch it. It wasn't some fluke that they ultimately won. They looked better. App State went in and beat Texas A&M by dominating time of possession, controlling the football, and just being better than Texas A&M. Hurt my heart. Wisconsin ran the ball well, turned it over. They weren't that great on third down. And ultimately, they lost to Washington State. Wisconsin, because it's going to be a night game, but I wanted that to be a ranked team. And they might get back there, but I want them to be 14-15. You got 3 versus 14. Like, that's got some juice. That's got some buzz. That's nice. It's a nice game. And then ultimately, Iowa, who should have been another ranked opponent that Ohio State's playing, they lose to Iowa State 10-7. I mean, my goodness, they couldn't do anything offensively. They scored on their first drive, couldn't put hardly anything together, had less than 200 yards total offense. So just always keep in mind, like, maybe the game wasn't exactly as you wanted it. There's always some things to work on. There's always some things to get better. But it's always better to correct after a win than a loss, especially when you're a team that has national championship implications and national championship hopes. So that's it for this edition of Carps Corner. We'll get the mailbag going midweek, get some of your questions answered. We'll get you ready for Toledo, and then we'll be, boom, hitting the ground running into the Big Ten slate. So continue to subscribe, like, throw your questions out there. I ask for them on Twitter at BCarp3. I appreciate all of the support and everything. Let's continue to grow this thing and make it easier for me to do this. We'll start doing some live streams too, try to find a good time when that would work as well. So thanks for everything. We'll talk to you soon.